We also have Jeremy Malick, who's with Church Coach Ministries, and he's going to share some stuff with you guys as well. But I just wanted to give you guys a quick glimpse of what we've been working on. So since I've gotten here in 2023, we have seen God move in some incredible ways. We've seen, we've seen 4 baptisms just in the last 6 weeks. We've had 8 people join our church, and our attendance in that is, over the last 6 weeks, is significantly up. It's exciting. And one of the things I want to point out to us is something that I love about our church, and one of the things that I care about deeply is our church's mission statement. And so our mission statement is to make disciples of Jesus. It's really simple, but then we have 4 qualifiers for how we seek to do that. So we want to make disciples of Jesus, and we want to bring them in, build them up, teach them how, and send them out. So if you didn't know our mission statement, that's it. To make disciples of Jesus, bring them in, build them up, teach them how, and send them out. I love that mission statement. And over the last few weeks, we have been meeting with Jeremy and addressing specifically one of those aspects, which is to bring them in, to reach people who are outside of our church, who aren't in church community, and to bring them into church community. And so we have a goal in this year to set up better systems and strategies for how we do that effectively and reaching visitors in guests who visit our church on Sundays and people within our community. And so real quickly, I want to share some statistics with you, and then I'm going to invite Jeremy up. So I just want to share with you something that's really encouraging to me. So in 2022, last year, we had 116 guests fill out our Connect card, our welcome card, our guest card. So this is last year, we had 116 guests. So to be generous, roughly, different churches kind of have different statistics, but roughly 15 to 25% of guests on a Sunday morning fill out a guest card or a Connect card, whatever we want to call it. So if we were to put those figures to the 116 that we've received this past year, then we're looking at anywhere from 450 to 775 people who have visited our church over the last year. And so when we think about that, that's 450 people who came here on a Sunday looking to get plugged into community, looking to build a deeper relationship with God. And of those people, only a fraction of them we actually connected with and brought them into community. And so part of what we're going to talk about today and tonight, what we're going to unfold for you, is a strategy to more effectively reach those people that God is already bringing to our church. God is already sending lots of people here, and we just want to have an effective strategy of how we reach those people, and then also part of that strategy, how we reach people outside of these walls as well. And so I know you hear from me a lot, and so you don't want to hear from me anymore. And so let me introduce to you Jeremy Malick, and he'll make his way up here. Jeremy is awesome. He's with Church Coach Ministries, and he has helped us tremendously in building this strategy. So why don't you give him a round of applause.
I wanted him to leave the dessert up here, but he didn't do that. My name's Jeremy Malick, and let me give you a little background on myself. I grew up as a church planter's son, and here's what that meant. That meant we would start a new church, we would be there for 2 years, hire the next pastor in, and we'd move to a different state and do it all over again. So growing up, I lived in Florida, Indiana twice, Colorado, California. So I kind of got around and that sort of thing. So when I went to college on a soccer scholarship. And when I did that, I decided that I didn't want to go into ministry. I didn't think I did. And so I had a business degree, went and got a business degree, and I went into banking industry, and I was a commercial lender, and I ran my own mortgage company for 13 years. But God has a sense of humor, as we all know. So in 2007, he put a call on my life to go into ministry, and of all things, join a church plant. They were in existence for about 2 years. They were about 200 people. And a lot of the things we're going to talk about tonight, we actually instituted into that church. And just an amazing story of God that happened with that church and the growth that took place and that sort of thing. And so I took a lot of the things I learned from the business world and incorporated them into the church world, so to speak. And God's been doing a lot of great things ever since. So I have served on 3 different churches as an executive pastor. And in 2015, God called me into full-time ministry with Church Coach Ministries, which I started. And what we do is we work with churches in 4 areas. We do redesigns of the inside of facilities. We do vision campaigns, which are very unique. We're not going to talk about that tonight. We do some stewardship training, and then ultimately we do assimilation training, which we're going to talk about tonight and focus on. And so what I want to start with is I want to start with the heart behind the ministry. This is not a volunteer role to fill that we're going to talk about. This isn't a box to check. This is actually an opportunity to change somebody's trajectory in life in the first 7 minutes they're on campus. I often tell people what it's like to be a guest at a church. It's a really difficult thing. Their anxiety is very, very high. So when they come through those doors, oftentimes they don't know who anybody is. They don't know where anything is inside the facility. They don't know if they have children. They have no idea how the children's ministry works, those types of things. So their anxiety is very high. Now, most churches in the country would say, and they would all admit, hey, we're a friendly church. And that's probably true, but most of the time they're only friendly to each other. And what I mean by that is if you were to stand in the back of the room after church lets out, you would see, week after week, you would see the same people get into the same pockets and talk with the same people week after week. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. That's called human nature. But you would see that repeatedly happen. So if you were a guest going into a church, I always challenge people, go somewhere you don't know anyone and stand there for 7 minutes and have nobody talk to you and see how that feels. Because in most churches in America, that is the experience. Now, will they get greeted at the door? Yes, they would get greeted at the door. But what often happens is their anxiety stays so high that they go into the sanctuary for service, and the pastor may be moving his lips, but they don't hear a word he's saying. And so what we want to do is we want to go through a process of removing that anxiety from that guest. Now, what we also want to talk about is being prepared to receive unchurched and lost people. Now, this is really a big thing in America, especially at churches. Most churches in America simply aren't prepared to receive unchurched and lost people. And by result, oftentimes God doesn't send them a lot of unchurched and lost people through their doors because they're simply not prepared. I don't care where you live in the country. I don't care where you live in the world. God is at work. I think we could all agree to that. Whether you're a believer yet or not, God is ultimately always bringing different people into your life, planting seeds that hopefully, ultimately, if you're a non-believer, leads to your salvation. And so as God's directing people into different people's paths and all that sort of thing, oftentimes he'll direct them to somebody who's ready to receive unchurched and lost people. So we're going to talk about tonight, what does that really look like? What's the heart behind it? How do we pray for those divine moments so that we're prepared to receive unchurched and lost people? I have to share this quick story, but I was working with a small church in Maryland, and we go through the training, and we have a night like this, and it's time for them to launch the ministry, and he says, Jeremy, that was great, but he says, I got to be honest with you, we haven't had an actual guest in our church in like 5 years. Like, we've had people come with people for Easter or Christmas, Creasters, they've shown up, but we haven't had anybody actually walk through the door that was a guest. So we went through the process and the prayer process we're going to talk about tonight, and it was their launch Sunday. We do it like a church plant. We do a pre-launch, and then about a month later we do a full launch. And it was time for their launch of the ministry, and that Sunday afternoon he calls me, and he says, you're not going to believe what happened. And I said, people showed up, didn't they? He said, yeah, we had 5 new families this week. That church doubled in size in 2 months. In 2 months, they doubled in size. Now, they weren't very big to begin with, but it was unbelievable what God did. And it's all about being in alignment with what Christ is doing in and through your community. where you serve, where you work, and we want to get in alignment with what Christ is doing. And so what I'm going to talk about tonight, I'm going to hold one thing up here. You guys, you don't need to look at these right now, but you guys have this at your table. And what this is this is a response card. And so tonight as we talk about these items, if one of these areas, one of these roles are something you would be interested in, if you would fill that out sometime while we're talking or at the end of the night and leave it at the tables that you got your name tags from on the way out, that would be wonderful. So what I want to describe to you is what happens in most churches in America about 15 minutes before service starts. Now guests, just so you're aware, they come to church early. Why do they come to church early? They come to church early because, again, they don't know who anybody is. They don't know where anything is. So they're oftentimes showing up about 15 to 10 minutes before service starts. And in most churches in America, what's going on is the band is on stage going through their final numbers for Sunday morning. The staff is kind of getting their things together for that morning and what they have to do. And then finally, sometimes the people who are assigned to greet aren't even in position to greet. And so a lot of times it ends up becoming where, the person who comes in as a guest is standing around and maybe somebody says hi to them, but you know how long that takes? That takes like 2 seconds, right? So what we want to do, and I'm going to walk you through what the welcome team would look like. Now we're going to talk about the welcome team, and the welcome team is what happens on Sunday morning before service. So what takes place is somebody would be greeted at the door, just like they're greeted now. And we've been doing a lot of talking behind the scenes about, where to enter to your building, your wonderful, beautiful building, by the way, how to enter the building. Because when I first came, they said, come in the door with the big cross. Well, let me tell you something. That one over here looks pretty big to me. And so I came in that door because I didn't know necessarily to drive around, and there was another bigger cross on the other door. So we've been doing a lot of talking about how to directionally bring people into that door. So that's one area. We don't really need to touch on that. I just want to share with you that we've discussed, because you have so many entry points into this facility. So when they come in, they would be greeted just like they are now. Somebody would shake their hand and meet them. And they would be walked over if they were a guest. What we do is we do a lot of training with language. So we want to do everything through relationship. So instead of saying, hey, is it your first time here? That's a very insider versus outsider type statement. We say, hello, my name is Jeremy. I don't believe we've met before. And by doing that, they will automatically give you the answer. Almost guaranteed. They'll be like, yeah, somebody invited us here and they're just not here yet, or this is our first week here, we're church shopping, but they'll give you that answer. Now, we want to train these teams how to pray, and how to pray a dangerous prayer, how to pray for divine moments. And so that God would give you that space, and when God tugs on your heart to respond, you create that space in your life to respond. And I have to share with you, at the first church I was at, I used to love working the welcome table. You couldn't get me off of it. I loved it. And we had a newly retired couple walk up. I knew that they were newly retired because where we happened to live, if you were of a certain age, you were retired. And so when they walked up, I just introduced myself. Hello, my name's Jeremy. I don't believe we met before. And he said, hey, my name's Pete. This is my wife, Mara. And as soon as he did that, I felt the Holy Spirit. I still remember the feeling. My shoulders arched back a little bit. The next thing out of my mouth was, Pete, what do you like to do? And Pete said, I love to golf. And I said, Pete, we're golfing tomorrow. And he says, that's great. I'm newly retired. And so Sunday morning rolls around, and I get up on stage. I think I was doing announcements that week. And so after service, he makes a beeline over to me. And he goes, Jeremy, I didn't realize you were a pastor at the church. I said, Pete, is that okay? Are we still allowed to golf? And so Pete said, yeah, we can go golfing. So this happened in 2008. Me and Pete are still friends today. Pete ended up becoming an elder at our church, and he ended up becoming the treasurer at our church. Now, as all of us who have been in ministry before in our lives, sometimes we go through challenges and tough times. Well, I was going through a tough time in 2012. And Pete called me, and he goes, Jeremy, I want to encourage you. And I'm like, I'm not so sure I'm up for encouragement, but what do you got to say, Pete? And so Pete said, I got to share with you. He said, I've been going to church for 40 years of my life. And he says, I don't remember a whole lot. But he says, I will never forget the face of Christ that you showed me and absolutely changed the trajectory of my life in that first little bit that I was on that church campus. Now, I got to tell you, this particular ministry we're talking about, you can literally change somebody's trajectory in life before they've even heard one word of the sermon. Because you're showing them a loving face of Christ and loving them into relationship with Christ and with the community within the church. Now, does that mean everybody that walks through the door you need to go golf with? No, yes. That doesn't mean that. Some of you are like, darn it, that would have been great. So, just so you know, in that example, it wasn't hard for me to go play golf. I actually love to play golf. That was fun for me. All I needed to do was be myself, be obedient, and just follow what God had me to do. And so I want you to know that through this process, this isn't always scary. I'm not necessarily asking you to, go 2 by 2, door to door, pass out tracts at the corner at the gas station. This is not that. This is loving people through relationship. Now, I have to tell you that people out there are so hungry for relationship. When we go through this process, there are so many people, especially now, after people have gone through COVID and all this stuff, and we were locked down. Of course, you guys lived in Texas, so you guys are good. Now, when we were going through COVID, just so you know, I lived in Southern California, like we were locked down. We couldn't leave. We leave the house like one step, like the police show up and say, get back in your house. So anyway, that's why I moved to Texas. So. So let me get back to the flow on a Sunday morning. So they'll be greeted at the door. Now, what we want to do is we want to remove that anxiety. And so what we're going to do is lead them over to the welcome desk where they're going to get a name tag. Now, you guys all have name tags on now. And what's great about the name tags is when you come up as a regular attender, you're going to write your name on the name tag in black ink. Now, you guys all know if you see a black ink, that's somebody who's been to our church more than once. Now, if you're a guest, they're going to have the guest write their name in green ink, for example. And so now you know as a congregation, anytime we see somebody's name in green ink, we realize that's a first-time guest, okay? Now, their anxiety is so high, they have no idea that their ink color is different. I can guarantee you that. So we're going to have another role that we're going to talk about. So after they're at the welcome desk, they're going to be introduced. And I have rarely seen this at any church in America, but we are going to introduce them to what I call a guest spotter. Now, what a guest spotter does is now the guest spotter is going to take them around and show them where things are. So they're going to show them where the restrooms are. They're going to take them over to the children's area, and they are going to show them, and I realized you guys don't have a children's check-in system, so you're probably going to get one down the road, but they would, okay, we got a thumbs up. So we are going to show them how to check in their children. Now, you guys are a church, nothing wrong with this, but you guys are a church that releases your children during service. So after the worship set, they get released to go to their classes and that sort of thing. Now, if you're a guest, there's nothing more awkward than that. That's like the most awkward thing of all time. So there's nothing wrong with doing that, but we need to educate them during the guest time they have with the guest spotter on how that works. So the guest spotter would explain that. They would, if they had children, they would take them and show them their rooms. Here's where Johnny's going to go. Here's where, so on and so forth are going to go. And actually show them, because even if they don't want to check in their children in the first week, because a lot of people don't, that's okay. When they come back the second week, we want them to know how to do it. So that's why we show them that. Then they will take them over to the refreshment area, get them some refreshments, and ultimately lead them into the sanctuary for worship. So now what just happened? What happened is their anxiety has been removed. They know where things are now. They've had some conversation through this process. And what's great is if everybody on that team has prayed that prayer, that dangerous prayer, God possibly has lined up a personality. He lines up people's personalities. and he's perhaps lined up somebody's personality with them, and maybe there's something going on in conversation that they're going to get together and have a cup of coffee, or maybe they both have young children and they're going to go to the park and get them together and play, or whatever the case may be. But God will align those things, and we just let him do that naturally. We don't have to get in the way. We don't need to force it. We just allow that to happen. And so now service has started, and you guys already do this, but there always needs to be acknowledgement to the guests during service. So just a quick welcome and an invite. Always invite them into something to fill out, perhaps a connection card type thing. And so that happens during service. Now, here's the key. There's an important 7 minutes before service we talked about. There's a very crucial 5 minutes after service. Now, this is not assigned to a team. This is for the congregation. When you guys are going through worship and you're singing songs and worshiping the Lord, I want you to pay attention to who's around you. That's why we do the name tags again, all right? Is I want you to look around you. And if you see somebody's name tag perhaps written in green ink, you realize that's a first-time guest. Now, we never want a guest after service to get up, kind of stand there and nobody talk to them, go to the lobby, nobody's talking to me, go out to the car and drive off. We never want that. It leaves a very, very bad taste. So I want us to get in the habit of saying hello to somebody we don't know before we say hello to somebody we do know. And so as a congregation, just take a few moments. If you see somebody before you talk to the normal people you normally talk to, just say hello. It makes all the difference. So as a congregation, we want to focus on that final 5 minutes. So now that handles what takes place basically on Sunday morning. I'm gonna come back to that in a minute on Sunday morning because I have a few things to share. But I want to go to the follow-up area. So the welcome team, what's on your card, there's an opportunity to be part of that welcome team. If you'd like to be a guest spotter and lead people around, if you'd like to work the welcome desk, if you'd like to be a greeter, and I realize you already have some of those people here, and that's great. So, but if you'd like to do that you could fill that out and be part of that. Now, one thing I'd like to say is if you serve in another ministry in the church, you can still do this one because I have a rule. New people come early. So by the time that first worship song is over, go in and be part of worship. Go work in the children's ministry, wherever you want to be. You don't need to welcome regular attenders who decide to come late because that's probably what? A quarter of them? Churches in America. So set a new precedent, like get them like, hey, no one even cares about me now that I'm coming late, so maybe they'll come a little bit early. So it's just an idea. So now I want to talk about the guest experience team. Now, the guest experience team is what I call a hospitality team, and you guys have that in place already, currently. And so what we're going to do, though, with that is we're going to develop that a little bit over time, and we're actually going to have members of that team actually work that area and meet people out front of that area on Sunday morning. So I just wanted to share with you just a little bit of a highlight because you see that on the card and what that is, but I do realize you guys already have that team in place. Now, on the follow-up team, I want to share with you what's going to happen. So on the follow-up, from a staff perspective, they're going to get a welcome email. Now, it's not going to be a generic welcome email like, hey, this church rocks, we're cool. We're actually going to invite them into something. Always invite them into something. You have a men's retreat coming up, a youth retreat, they have kids. You have, anything going on at the church, invite them into it. Whether you do a Bible study during the week or whatever it is, please invite them into it. And then on Tuesday, the pastor will send out a handwritten note card to them, welcoming them to the church, and he'll insert a little something in there with that. And then finally, here's where the follow-up team comes in. And if you'd like to be part of this, we already have leaders for both the welcome team and the follow-up team, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. So we're looking for people to be part of the team. But what we're asking to do is we want to deliver a gift for the entire family to the home during the week. So sometime between Wednesday and Saturday, we want to deliver a gift. And what we've been using a lot is we've been using the idea of a family movie night in a box. And what that looks like is they get this box dropped off at their door, And when they open it, it's going to have a bag of Skittles, a bag of M&Ms, a thing of licorice. It's going to have a discount or a movie coupon thing to maybe Redbox, or if you have local movie rental places still, if they even exist. I don't know if they exist anymore. But whatever the case may be, you can do Redbox, those sorts of things. But they get this thing at their doorstep, and then as a family, they're going to be enjoying the bag of microwave popcorn that's in there, watching the movie, the candies for the kids, all that kind of thing, and be able to enjoy an evening as a family. Now, one of the things that we do as part of this gift is we have what I call a guest leave behind card. And I actually developed this in the business world. At the first church I was at, we put this into place, and we grew so rapidly. We were at 200 people 18 months later, we were at 600. 6 months after that, we were at 1,200. And CCM Magazine came to interview us, and we were one of the fastest 100 growing churches in America. And I went through what we do with the assimilation and all that kind of thing and explained. And they came back to us, and they said, you're growing 85% faster than the national average. And we really believe that when somebody comes to your church, you designed a way that they cannot forget you. And so what I designed, and I'll hold it up for you so you can see what it looks like. I brought one with me. It's a business card size card, and all it has on the front is it has the church's logo and it has the service times. And when they opened up that card, I contracted with all kinds of ice cream places, oil change places, restaurants, bowling alleys, putt-putt, you name it, it's on here. And so what they would do is they would put this in their person wallet, and they would use it for the next 6 to 8 weeks. So they'd be out at dinner, a month later because they were church shopping, and they'd be like, you know what, we really did love that church, we should go back. And they're using it on the spot. And so this is not for sale. It's nothing we're selling. This actually goes in the movie night in a box. And so when they get this, then they will use this for the next 6 to 8 weeks. And we're developing that for them here as well. And so I wanted to share that with you. Now, I want to share with you one other thing that's really important is when I was at the first church I was at, we spent a long time figuring out what was going to go in the bulletin and the program and that sort of thing. And so, to be honest with you, at that particular church, man, it would be about 2 hours to 2.5 hours a week figuring out what was going to go in that thing. And I would watch people after service throw them away or put them in the recycle bin. And I'm like, why are we doing this? So finally, at a staff meeting, I stood up and I said, we're not doing this anymore. And they're all looking at me like, what are you talking about? And I said, I got a different idea. I said, we're not going to print another thing in this church that doesn't have an external focus. And so we developed a new type of program or bulletin. And so I'm going to hold a few up. We had fun with it. I'm going to show you what it looked like. So they're about this size. Every month, different color, And so what we did, though, is there was 3 rules. I said, there's 3 rules. I said, you have to word it so that if somebody outside the church read it, they would know what was going on inside of the church. So, for example, if you have a youth ministry and the youth ministry has a name, let's call it Fusion, all right? You don't say Fusion meets Wednesday night at 7 o'clock because I don't know if that's a bone fusing class or what that is. And so you be very clear. Student Ministries meets at 7 o'clock on Wednesday night. The other rule was you always highlighted the current sermon series or the upcoming sermon series so that people understood you were a Bible preaching church. Maybe they were interested in a topic that you're preaching on, that sort of thing. Now, the other rule is there always had to be a welcome to the guest on the front of it. And so those were the 3 things that had to have. Now, what then I said we're going to make a partnership with an outside business. And so we didn't do it just for a week. We made a partnership with an outside business for a year. And what our thought process was behind it is let's love those people into relationship with Jesus Christ throughout the course of the year. So we it was a coffee shop that we utilized the first time. And I went in there and I talked to the manager and I said, hey, we're going to come and we're going to leave these. And why don't you guys give us a 10% discount? and we'll frequent your establishment often. He's like, that's great. Go ahead. That's cool. So we didn't market this. We didn't put the logo of the coffee shop on here. We as a congregation knew we were going to love them into relationship with Jesus Christ. And so what happened is we would leave these, and they would start to ask questions. They'd be like, hey, I have 2 kids. I'd love to get them involved in your VBS. How do I do that? So on and so forth. And so after that first year, we had 8 families from that coffee shop end up calling our church their church home. We had 4 salvations and 3 baptisms in that first year. And so it was such a tremendous life impact piece. So now this becomes a discipleship mechanism for those in the body, also those outside the body. And so what's so great about this is now you start to think missionally without you realizing you're even doing it, because it's natural. We all go to coffee shops. We all go to restaurants. We all go wherever to connect with these different businesses. And so we started doing that. And it was amazing. I'll never forget the rest of my life the time the couple came up on stage and got baptized in service and stood there and said, John and Mary came into our establishment every week and loved on us, reached us for Christ, and now we're being baptized. That snowball effect of excitement and seeing God's hand at work, it's just infectious. Now, I got to share with you, now that we're talking about this, a different church. I don't know why it was in Maryland, but it was in Maryland. A different church, I was in Maryland, and me and the pastor went out to dinner. And it was right after the night that I did a presentation like this. And he says, Jeremy, he goes, I don't feel confident with the restaurant thing. How do we make a partnership and that sort of thing? And I'm like, let's try it right now. And the waiter came over and I said, who would we talk to about making a partnership? We want new people that come to our church we want to connect with and that sort of thing. And so anyway, he says, well, I'll get the manager. The manager came over and her name was Tara. And I said, Tara, hey, and this was an Alliance church. I said, hey, I'm with First Alliance Church, and, we're looking to connect with a restaurant in the community, and that's all I got out of my mouth. That's it. She pulled up a chair, sat down. She says, I have 6 kids. I haven't been in church in 4 years. Tell me about your church. I said, Pastor Mike, tell her about the church. We talked with her for 45 minutes. This was on a Saturday night. Sunday morning, she was in church with her entire family, and Pastor Mike, I just talked to him about 4 days ago. This happened about 4 or 5 years ago. She never even hardly ever misses a Sunday. Now, did we do anything special? Was it hard to have a conversation in a restaurant? It was not. All as we did is make ourselves open to the opportunity God put before us. People are so hungry for relationship out there, I'm telling you. And so if we get ourselves in alignment with what Christ is doing in and through our community and open ourselves up through the power of the Holy Spirit, through the power of prayer, and allow God to build the church, he will build it. We just need to be prepared to receive unchurched and lost people. And so I want to give you the opportunity to do that, because I can tell you in my experiences working on staff at different churches and playing roles in these ministries, it's life impacting. And if God aligned with as many people as we have in the room, if God aligned new people to each one of you, I think we could all use a couple new friends a year. Could you imagine how many people we could reach if just a couple, God lines our personalities, just 2 people to us a year? It would be amazing. Now, I'll take it a step further. After you get used to praying this prayer on a Sunday morning, try doing it every day of your life and see what God does with it. He will do some crazy things with you throughout even your work week, with people at your work, all of those things. So I just wanted to share to you guys the impact and the opportunity of this. And so as you're thinking through this today, really consider either being part of the follow-up team or the welcome team that takes place on Sunday morning here, and really being an impact. And so how this is going to work is the follow-up team leader is Ann. I don't know where Ann is in the room, but okay, there she is. Hello. And then Mary is doing the welcome team. Oh, there's Mary. There's Mary. And then, give me a second here. And then Michelle is doing the guest experience team. Is she here?
She's with kids.
She's guest experiencing right now? Okay, cool. So anyway, we're not asking you to necessarily need to lead one of these ministries, but we would like team members on them. So tonight's your opportunity to do that. And then what we're going to do, I want to make sure I get the dates right for you, but we are going to do the soft launch on Sunday, March 12th. And that's where we're just going to practice. You can do it wrong, it's okay. We are just going to practice, get used to it. And then finally, we're going to do the full launch on Easter Sunday morning, which is April 9th this year. So I'm finished with my part. I was going to invite Pierce back up. And I just want to let you guys know that this is a true impacting ministry where you can change somebody's trajectory in life in the first 7 minutes they're on campus. The points of contact, if you think about it, people will be greeted at the door. People will meet somebody at the welcome desk. They will have a guest spotter lead them around. They will be acknowledged in service. Somebody will say hello to them before they leave. They are going to get an email from the church, a handwritten card from the pastor, and then finally they're going to get a family night movie night in the box. And so before we even expect them to have the opportunity to come back for a second week, they would have 8 points of contact. And if we're all praying that prayer, God's going to align somebody's personality to somebody. So that's it.
Thank you, Jeremy. So as you can tell, I know some of you are like, what just happened? Because it's like drinking from a fire hydrant with the amount of information he just gave. So the big thing I want to just communicate is that this is a comprehensive strategy that we're going to be unrolling, that all of it is just, it's geared towards taking people that are outside of community. They're outside of relationship with Christ. They're not a part of a church, and it's about bringing them in. And that's what the goal of this is, and some really good strategies to do that. And we all have a role to play. So even if you don't fill out one of those cards saying you want to be a part of one of those teams, you'll still have a role to play on a Sunday morning, because we will all be interacting with and meeting new people, especially in this new season of ministry here at First Baptist Church. And so we all have a role to play in that. There's a lot of information that was just given to you, and we have a written form of that. Because I know some of you're not going to remember any of this, and that is okay. So we have a written form of that, and you can grab that on your way out. Whenever we dismiss at the end of this, we have a document for you that'll detail some of the roles in our connections team. But the big thing, what I want you to do is, if this is something you are interested in, go ahead and grab one of those cards, fill out the information, check the boxes of the teams you're interested in serving on. Just because you check the box doesn't mean you have to serve on that team. Okay, so we'll reach out to you. We'll give you some more information. We'll see whether you feel like you're going to be a good fit for that. And then we'll have some additional training and next steps and how we move forward and do all of that. Does that make sense? For like 7 of you it does, but that's okay. Well, I know that whenever we fill our stomachs with tasty treats, then our eyes get heavy. So I know that some of you are probably ready to find out who won our dessert competition. Before we announce that information, can I just pray? And we're going to pray the dangerous prayer right now. And we're going to pray that the Lord sends us people and gives us interactions with those who he's already stirring in their lives. And so let's go to the Lord in prayer in that, and then we'll learn who won the competition. Father, I want to thank you for Jeremy, and thank you for his fresh ideas and what he's making us think about and how we interact with guests. You're already bringing people to our church every single Sunday. There are between 10 and 30 guests almost every Sunday. And Lord, if we could just figure out a way to connect with them in a deeper level, then I know you can use us in mighty ways. But Lord, right now we ask that we're going to pray that dangerous prayer. We're going to ask that this week in our lives that you align us with somebody. You're already working and stirring in someone's heart. You're already working to woo them to yourself. And Lord, we ask that you help us to see interactions as not as distractions. Distractions are never a distraction, and interruptions never an interruption. Lord, you are in all of those things. Help us to see those as opportunities to share who you are with people through just normal everyday interactions, Father. Help us to be people who live that way, and then help us to be a church who operates that way. We know, Father, that if we do, that you will move in mighty ways in our church and send many unchurched, unreached people here. And so we ask that, we pray that, and we thank you for being faithful in doing that. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.